Welcome to another episode of Thoughts in the AM of Exposed Video because we're still figuring out the lighting, but I think this time is a little bit better. Well, today I might be off on a couple of tangents, but the main concept is discussing the value of time. And this is the notion that is coming up a lot, especially during this period where we're having the working culture evolve. We're coming from a stage where we're realizing that the 8 to 5, 9 to 5, maybe some people with extra overtime and those who do 60-hour weeks, which by the way, technically are not as productive, tend to leave to a point where working from home is becoming like, yeah, you can work from home and be productive, or you don't necessarily have to be in the office. And it's very interesting just looking at how the working culture initially also evolved to a point where we are now. Now, if you may not know this, it's only in 1919 that it became international law, and this is after the foundation of the International Labour Organization in the same year, that on the 28th of November 1919, they passed the Regular Work Declaration 001 that then stipulated the 8-hour weeks or 8-hour days into a total 48 hours a week. Because back then, people used to work around 100 hours a week, and I don't know who would pull off 100 hours. Now we're moving into a new revolution where, and if you can, it's understandable those times because you were looking at majority was factories, and that means you needed people on the ground to even process. Like think of call centers, how they used to look like. I mean, right now you're talking about a computer that just does pa, 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 pa. So you don't have the same type of needed speed. And with this whole evolution that is coming in with the pandemic and the shift in the way of working, we're starting to realize a lot of things are being taken by technology. Now, does that mean necessarily unemployment is going to increase? Yes, there's that fear that that's what's going to happen. In essence, I would see it as an opportunity for humanity to finally discover what we are interested in instead of being like mini robots that would work in an industrial system, which is another thing that we need to also look at into education and how, oh, by the way, this place, let me go on a tangent, is hot in the morning, but cold at night, like seriously cold. So, keeping myself warm, let me go back to the tangent. Now, what we're starting to realize is that as machines, as technology, as artificial intelligence, as 3D printing for houses start existing, we're talking about renewable energy, driverless cars, I can go the list. What then are we going to be doing? Right? How then do we evolve? Are we afraid about the system that we use to earn money in order to get our food on our table, get our housing and the likes? This is posing a challenge that system needs to change. Even the whole concept of money as well and investments and the like needs to change. And the whole human development as well needs to change. The education needs to change. Look at a classroom. People would sit down in a similar format to how you'd sit in a factory. Schools, even how they were designed, looked like a factory. You also think of it. When did the phone come out? Again, I'll put the time there. But I remember like in high school, we still used to do the letters until we had like the box phone come in, and then the cell phone started popping up. So the type of communication we had in that era, there was this time when you knew like you didn't have the noise of the world, you didn't have social media to compare, you were thinking about yourself and where you're moving next and family. Yes, the concept of who you are and the concept of what life should be or could be was somewhat limited to what you're exposed to, and that would have been either by TV, newspapers, radio. Yeah, it sounds arcane, but yes, that's what you could get. And so, in the age of the internet and the age of social media and Wikipedia, YouTube, Google, I mean, I'm constantly giving these ideas just to show you how much we are broadening out. You can access knowledge from another country or another subculture and build into who then do you believe then your life could be, or what kind of life do you even want to build. And you also get different access to different opportunities. I remember this is back in 2015, and I was a fresh volunteer and I was rock bottom. There's this one point I was properly rock bottom and I had a proper debt. That was the first time I experienced debt actually. And so a job is asking you for 5 years of experience, 15 years of experience, and they're like, okay, where do I get this experience if there's nobody who's willing to even give me the first opportunity? So then you become an intern, you do things for free, etc, etc. So in this point, I really needed to get the finances in order to be able to take care of myself, take care of like also start contributing to the family, because that's another dynamic as well that we tend to have, especially if you're living in Africa, where depending on the generations and the generational gap, you have to work twice as hard, not just only to uplift your nuclear family, but also goes to extended family and eventually to your community. You get the gist. So I started looking at online work, and I remember my thought process then was that there's no way they're gonna hire me. And this is coming from a point where I would imagine that, yeah, no one's going to employ an African, or two, I was doubting, do I even have the skill set to provide that kind of service? Even though I had been doing things like graphic design and the likes for like almost 3 years, I was doubting my skill set. And so the first thing I had to do was change my mindset and, stop putting myself in this particular box and living to a stereotype and believing that stereotype, to being that I believe in my skill set and what I can be able to bring on the table. And so I scoured the internet. I was scouring the internet of how to, make money online. Oof, those YouTube videos, I was there. I spent a couple of hours good on those ones. I mean, my laptop was full of classes. At this point, when I was researching into how to use MATLAB so that we could code we were calling it our coordinate measuring machine, for you to be able to take the dimensions, let's say, of this mouse. So the machine ideally would come point, and then translate that into your PC. I'm trying to be as simple as I can in this. Translate this into your PC, and then from that you can be able to manipulate the dimensions, which you can create an invert of. Like, think of it like a mold, right? You put like a mask here, and then you get a mold of your face, and then you can pour silicone, and then it comes out like a replica of your face. I don't know whether that actually happens, but you get the gist. So that's what we were doing with the machine to try and cut costs of doing the measurements and things like this. And I realized the amount of online resources that I could get, the fact that I could also reach out to different universities and talk to other students within the same course and build up my knowledge around this topic. That year, I don't know, something just switched. I realized I could rely on my capacity to learn, and not necessarily because the type of books we were being given was on a particular static knowledge. Rather, any question I have, I can get it answered, and I can also find resource materials that could help me understand the reasoning behind that formula, the reasoning behind that sequence of you coding a particular machine to do a particular operation. Now, I digressed a bit, but it's just to build into this whole notion of how time is changing and how also society is changing and how education needs to change. We are getting to a stage where possibly the next generations will have way more freedom to choose to be who they want to be, because they have been influenced by information not only within their subculture or within their country or within their nation, like we used to have a lot of that influence, but rather what they're seeing different people across a whole spectrum of identification are putting out there as content. And so as much as there's this fear around then who are we becoming, what is the identity, trying to put ourselves in a particular box, we will get to a point where humanity would be as one, where everybody has created a beautiful painting of who they are. They could take resources from a European culture, or an Asian culture, an African culture. It could be even something all the way to the desert, and they form their identity and their values as to who they want to become and the kind of narrative they want to write. So we need to switch our mind from being, I have to stick here around an 8 to 5 job, rather to being, how do I start investing in who I want to become and where do I need to go? And breaking away from the system that has been, wake up in the morning, churn out, go here, do like 8 hours, of which research is also showing that honestly, you have like around 3 hours that you're properly productive. The other 5 hours, you're either jumbling around or you're not as productive. So for me to wrap up this whole tangentish conversation or thoughts in the AM, I want to give like a couple of points that I have realized kind of help you break away from that notion. First, taking care of yourself. If you are in the system, hi people, if you're in the system, what to do about that. If you're not yet in the system, also things to consider to create a sort of balance as you discover who you want to be and what you want to invest in. And this is not necessarily investing with regards to doing a job. It could be in your art, it could be in your self-awareness. Before I get into that, there's this one time I had a conversation with a group of friends, and I was telling them that we have been marketed that there's a particular lifestyle or particular set of lifestyle that if you hit that, you have made it. And I argued that sometimes a person, to them, they might feel that if they get their million followers or the cars or the Benzes or live in this particular city, that to them is their level of self-accomplishment. And it's still as great of an accomplishment if someone wants to be a writer in the middle of nowhere, that they bought a piece of land and they have solar power, the water, and they're growing their vegetables and the likes, because that is the type of narrative that they want to write. So as we also diversify how we communicate our lives, we need to understand that we don't necessarily have to live the same life. And I bring back that beauty of the fact that you can get access to so much information, different content, see ways of living, and find what clicks with you, what clicks with your soul, what makes you feel like, I get that, I relate to that, and modulate what kind of life you want to live. It doesn't have to be all about the money. It needs to be all about your, I don't know that this is the correct word, but your spiritual awakening, more or less, that makes you feel happy, that makes you feel in love with the whole concept of the painting you're giving, with its all ups and downs. So here are my points so that we can wrap this up. One thing that I realized, especially if you're working in an 8 to 5 job, or things haven't been as stable, and now also during COVID where people are losing the concept of time, is you need to eat properly. And I mean, this is like getting into this notion of meal preps. Now, I realized that I wasn't really preparing a lot of my meals, and I was spending a lot of money outside, and that was counterproductive if you're trying to save to do something that you want. I have like goals for next year. Food is what makes you move. If you're hungry, you're not gonna produce anything. You'll find like a nice place with fresh vegetables, or like a market, getting all this content, and then looking online for home cooks. There's this one channel, I think maybe I'll post it down, that I really liked and follow, and it's about pro home cooking and how you can do meal preps for a week, so that way you also excite your taste buds, you also excite your, you always look forward to the next meal. And then it's also even an added notion when you realize it's a meal prep that you've done on your own, and you're like, hey, I'm treating myself to some good meals. And it's just, again, something that you can learn on how to prepare vegetables can change the whole taste spectrum, or even the sequence of how you put the vegetables and the likes. I digress. Back. The other thing is about exercise. Now, people are always thinking and looking at this whole workout of, let me do like 1 hour workout or 30, and then you just go like, I don't have time for that. Yeah, I know a lot of us say that. But if you start out like with 15 minutes a day, and there are these applications that you can use that help you, feel that, ooh, I got it. I did 5 minutes today, 15 minutes. I feel a little bit stronger. And then as you build up into it, the more your body also starts appreciating, because you have to understand that as well. If you don't feed your body, then as much as you do all those 8 to 5, get the remuneration, your body's going to come and kick you in like the next 20 years or so. So there's an investment in that. The other thing is to slow down. There is the benefit of information that is flowing, all the content. There's also the negative side, of which, but there's still studies are being made as to how all this overflow of information is affecting society, affecting the individual, affecting the career, affecting the projections into the future. So take a moment as a person and just slow down. And how do we slow down? You can use meditation. I believe this is the kumbaya of the internet but it's a valid kumbaya in the sense that I sometimes enjoy just switching off everything. Like I switch off my laptop, my phone, everything. And there's a point where people do not get me, and I'm like, it's my time. If anything, what is being demanded from me is based on my time. The one thing that everybody has across the diversity, the one thing each and every single human being, as we identify ourselves as, is time. Those 24 hours, they're yours. That is a guaranteed bank in the check. Now, how much that is worth in the context of the society we live in is different. That varies. Some are like 1 hour is worth $10,000 to someone, 1 hour is worth 10 cents. Now, this is a whole other discussion we can have later. But the concept of time is yours. And that means you need to understand, since you're the narrator of this time, you do deserve the point where you need to slow down and keep quiet and meditate and think of how else do I invest on my time. And this is not purely again on working, but also the type of relationships you have, the hobbies you want to build into, the reading, the context of your identity, who you're building yourself to be. All that is chimed into your time. So taking a moment to slow down will be way more beneficial for you to see the long game. Now, sometimes I try to do this strategic thing whenever I'm in the workplace or also in my design work and everything, where I look at something in the context of, okay, am I being productive right now? No. So no matter how many times I may try to do this over the next 10 hours, if I do not slow down and see where the problem is, take like a good 10 minutes, I'll have wasted 10 hours. So maybe even from those 10 minutes to 1 hour, just slow down, and maybe even I just need to get myself out of the whole context of what is happening. I realize I save myself way more time in solving a problem or even creating something. So think around that, take a moment, get into the whole meditation thing, or even just purely stop and switch off and allow. And if your brain is like, no, I have to do this, you're like, I control this time, this space. And so when I say we slow down, we're slowing down. And then you slow down, take a moment, think about it, reflect on it, and then move ahead. Next thing is, as I mentioned at some point here, the concept of, you're doing 8 hours, but you're productive possibly for proper 3 hours. Now, sometimes what happens in an office, and my friends will relate to this, is where you have interruptions coming in, or somebody interjects, oh hey, I need this, or oh hey, this email pops up. And that would space out a 3 hour of productivity across the 8 hours, and then you feel, oh yeah, I did 8 hours worth of work, but technically you had maybe 3 hours where you're solid putting in. And this is also applicable to now working from home, where you forget the notion of 8 hours and you're like working maybe 20 hours in a day because work is in front of you. You need to segment and decide how many hours you're really working and invest, again, your time in the other aspects of your relationships, yourself, your identity, who you want to see yourself in the next 10 years. Again, I tangent. So creating a 4-hour block, I realized this was gold for me, where I sit for like 4 hours. I literally tell everybody, my emails, everything. I'm like, for this 4-hour block, no one interrupts my flow. You need anything for me to do, tell me a day before so that I include it in the next hours. Now, is this practical? It doesn't really work if you're going to the office setting, but if you're working from home, it is beautiful, because then for those 4 hours, you put out an outline of what you want to accomplish, and then you go at it. And after those 4 hours, you tell your mind again, relax. And now you can relax because you've been really productive. So you can relax for like an hour or two and then get back to another 4-hour block. And those are constructive 8 hours in total. Or again, depending on how you space out your day. Now you can tell my thoughts in the AM, I space out my time differently, because I realized the sections as well within the day that I enjoy. And here, making videos at this time, I don't have the interruptions and the likes, and so I can talk for 20, right now it's 24 minutes, continuous. Possibly with the breaks, it may not be as is, but you get the gist. The next thing is spacing out meetings. Now, this is applicable for those who are constantly, like, especially if you're in the management level or you are in sales, you have a lot of follow ups, is to space out your meetings. I used to do this thing where somebody calls me, like, hey, when can I meet you? And then I put them right after a meeting that I set up. Maybe an hour earlier or the likes, because I'm like, okay, if I do all my meetings in one day, I'm done with them. But there will always be meetings, there will always be follow-ups. The more you squeeze them in, the less time you have to work on the deliverables on a particular meeting. So if you had a meeting to discuss on a project, let's say today, and then you squeeze in all these other meetings just because according to your calendar you're free, then you will not have time to work on the deliverables that you need to put out on Project X, and therefore have a constructive meeting the next time. So what I'm starting to practice a bit more is where I space it out. Now, just because I don't have a meeting today doesn't mean I don't have deliverables to work on. So I'm not going to squeeze in any other meetings in that. And that is something that you realize actually works. Everybody can space out the time. That sense of urgency you create it yourself because you're like, yeah, I want to be here, I want to be doing this. But if you notice with meeting settings, they ask everybody who's available and when are we available, and then you set a realistic time. So space out your meetings to account for your delivery time, and that way you also give yourself that space for those 4 hours to work on them, space for you to think, space for you to engage with other people, have a social life, eat, sleep, everything else. Okay. The other thing is sleep. I just mentioned that. It's important. I came up with this cardinal rule starting this year. I was like, I do not care how many things that you have on your list, but the one cardinal space of time is 7 hours of sleep. I am sleeping 7 hours. Why? I realized when I sleep 7 hours, I'm way more productive versus doing like 3 hours here, and then I wake up, I do some like work because I'm like, I'm trying to develop a deliverable. This comes back to that whole thing of having squeezed too many meetings in one space without having space for delivery, to a point where I was not even eating properly because again, your body just aches at you. It's mad at you. So doing the 7 hours, the body's like, I have to sleep. I had like 15 minutes to do like a bit of exercise. I worked out, feeling good and vibes. I had spaces in between where I could go quiet, and therefore my productivity levels started to increase. And yes, you need to block out your sleep and be very serious with that. Once you do that, you realize actually it is easy to fit in 7 hours sleep in a whole working week with all the projects and everything you're doing, because you did what? You did your 4-hour blocks, which makes sure you're productive. You have your space out, like time to strategically think ahead where you're not, again, putting your mind into all the noise. And then you are eating well, you're exercising, so your body now feels healthy. So I reached my size limit. So let's just wrap this up. So the last thing is on self-treatment. And this is like literally as it means. You need to pamper yourself. Man, woman, child, wherever, you need to pamper yourself. And what do I mean by pamper yourself? Find things that you enjoy. This could be either the walks, reading a book like in silence, or listening to Mozart, or listening to, oh my goodness, of late I've been listening to this Malian music, especially the ones played with the kora. Is just a beautiful background. I like exploring different tastes of music. I digress. Now, it's still part of this. So we discover like how you treat yourself, like the self-treatments. You could take yourself to a spa, or you can buy the different things and do it in home. I like meet my teeny weeny afro. I enjoy my hair days because that means it's me and my hair and no interruptions, and I can get to change it in ways I want. To also the type of meals you want to prepare yourself. If you saw like a recipe online, you look for the ingredients and you prepare that. Breakfast in the morning, honey pancakes, God, like all these things. And what they're about is that self-treatment acknowledges your existence to yourself. And this is important since we tend to always look for validation. And I think I mentioned this at some point in one of the videos. When we're looking for validation outside, they're never going to be able to validate you the way you want to be validated. And I put this in quotes because your experience as a person, your traumas, your excitements, your values, your beliefs, all these things that make who you are, you know what would remedy that. You know what would fulfill that. You know what would help you not cope, but be able to come to understanding with what your traumas are, to come to an understanding with yourself when you're going through a low phase, to know how to congratulate yourself, treat yourself with that umped and excitement when you reach your goals. You know that best. And so that self treatment that is in this whole process of what I had mentioned before, to doing intentional things. So it could be like taking yourself out on a date, like going out on a park, things that even if you're in a relationship, you still need to do for yourself, because your partner, again, they will not know how to fully validate you. They can bring the plus to that, and through your communication, you also understanding theirs while they understand yours, creating this healthy environment, safe space for both of you. If you're in that element and state of yourself, then you can be able to channel it out and offer, how they say that for you to be able to love another person, you should love yourself. And this is just to give you a hint of how, if you look at your work life, if you look at your social life, and you look at your spiritual, emotional, physical, did I say all of them? They're actually four. Look at your spiritual, you know what? Let me create an acronym so that we can remember this. Think of your spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical health. Then you can be able to do all these things. So it's a work in progress, and we're a perpetual work in progress. We grow. Information, access to different people who are discovering themselves or who have discovered themselves and are going at it, is a guide for us now to be able to paint in all the colors, in all the simplicity, complexity that we want. Have a good evening or a good day or a good morning. I do not know. These are Thoughts in the AM, and I'll catch you next time. Ciao.